Something was off. Not with the order, not with the restaurant. With him. Julian wasn't even sure what he was running anymore. Net profits were still rising. New locations kept opening. But every time he stepped into an Aura Burger store, he felt disconnected. Like walking into an over-edited photograph, everything too perfect, too polished, too fake. And today that feeling drowned him like a wave of cold water in the heart of SoHo. Aura Burger SoHo. Exposed brick walls, oak wood tables, Edison bulbs hanging low. The scent of truffle oil thick in the air mingling with smoke from premium beef. Staff dressed identically white shirts, brown aprons, hair tied back like soldiers on parade. Everything was right, so right, it was suffocating. He chose a seat near the register, dressed in an old hoodie and faded jeans. No one recognized him as the CEO. He preferred it that way. He liked observing without being seen. Then it was his turn at the counter. The cashier was a young woman, dark curls in a low bun, eyes sunken from lack of sleep. Her name tag read, Maya. When he handed her a dull black card, the founder's card, a piece only he possessed, she frowned, swiping it once, then again. Beep. Declined. Again, declined. Maya swallowed hard. Her lips trembled. I'm sorry. The card was declined. The words shot through Julian's head like a needle. She didn't dare meet his eyes. Her hands shook as she returned the card. Julian offered a polite smile, about to reach for another. But then he froze. A rebellious thought surfaced. What if he couldn't pay? What if, for the first time, someone in his own restaurant chain faced a customer who didn't have enough? He dug into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled handful of bills, someone's a few coins clinking as they dropped. On purpose, he handed her less than the total. Maya glanced at the remaining balance on the screen. She said nothing. She lowered her gaze and opened the tip jar beside the register. Her hand moved slowly, almost painfully, as she took out the exact amount missing and dropped it into the till. A soft beep followed. The order was approved. No one in line noticed. No one looked up. But for Julian, time stood still. It wasn't shame that gripped him. It was something heavier. In Maya's eyes, in the way she bowed her head, swallowed hard, and used her own money to help a stranger, he saw something far more devastating than poverty surrender. Someone who once dreamed. Someone who once believed. Now only surviving in silence. Julian walked away, tray in hand, but his heart was heavy. He no longer smelled the rich aroma of truffle oil. Only the acrid stench of fear lingered, seeping into the brickwork, clinging to the soul of this restaurant like a nameless growing mold. Rush hour. Trays clinked against each other, the sizzle of the grill playing like a wordless soundtrack. But amid all the movement, Julian noticed one thing: no one was speaking to one another. Not a laugh. Not a single warm greeting to a customer. The employees moved as if programmed, eyes fixed on tasks, feet stepping in perfect rhythm without a single misstep. A girl dropped a piece of bread on the floor. She froze for a second, quickly glanced in one direction, then bent down as if about to cry, picked it up, and silently tossed it in the trash. Julian followed her gaze. Donovan Finch. The man stood near the kitchen, pass, arms wrapped around a tablet, his white shirt crisp without a wrinkle, dark tie cinched at the neck like a silk noose. He didn't need to speak. His presence was enough. Julian didn't hear him say a word, but wherever he moved, the air seemed to grow colder. Each of his steps pressed down on the tiled floor like a layer of invisible pressure. When he passed by, shoulders sank, eyes averted. Some even held their breath. A young guy, probably new, dropped a pair of tongs. The metallic clang echoed like a slap in a silent cathedral. Donovan turned, his eyes locked onto the boy. No yelling, no harsh words, just a tap on the tablet and a few quiet steps forward. Jake Wright. His voice was as smooth as a receipt printer. The boy nodded. Donovan smiled. The back restroom needs a deep clean. Use a toothbrush. I want to see my reflection in the floor tiles. Consider this. Your chance to prove yourself. The entire restaurant went silent. Julian went rigid. No one said a word. No one flinched as if this were routine. Jake lowered his head, said nothing. He turned and walked off like someone heading to a sentencing. Julian clenched his soda cup. The bubbles hissed and spilled over the rim like fury that had been held in too long. This wasn't management. This was psychological warfare, a silent execution. Donovan didn't need to raise his voice. He had instilled so much fear that words were obsolete. Julian looked around. Every face was stretched tight like a violin string. Their eyes clung to their work as if it were the only thing left they could control. No one here was fully human anymore. They were cogs in a machine, and Donovan was the conductor of this silent symphony. And in that exact moment, Julian knew for sure something had rotted from the inside. This wasn't just a poorly managed store. It was a culture programmed to devour the soul. That girl Maya lingered in Julian's mind all afternoon. Not because she used tip money to cover for him, but because of how she did it without a second of hesitation, as if sacrificing herself for the system was something she'd long grown used to. That evening in his hotel room on Spring Street, Julian sat in front of his laptop. The glow of the screen cast a harsh light across his tense face. He opened Aura's internal network, a section reserved for executive-level access. It was a cold, meticulously organized vault of data, almost inhuman in its cleanliness. He typed in Maya's name. No results. Julian frowned. He remembered her name clearly, Maya Brooks. It was printed right on her name tag, just below the Aura logo. So why wasn't she listed on the shift roster? He opened his email, digging through the weekly operating reports for the SoHo location. Still nothing. The current staff list only had 14 names. Julian counted again in his head. He'd seen at least 17 people working today. A chill crawled down his spine. He grabbed his phone and pulled up a photo he had taken without thinking earlier that day, a handwritten schedule posted near the register. Maya's name was written under Monday, Wednesday, Friday, each shift from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. The handwriting was messy, some parts scribbled out and rewritten with a small, sticky note attached, Maya okay, to close Friday. He cross-referenced every date. Maya's name appeared nowhere in the official system. She didn't exist. Julian began tracing from the beginning automated scheduling time logs, payroll entries. Everything lined up for the names in the system. But not for Maya. No clock-ins, no tax records, no formal wages. He suddenly remembered what she had said that morning in a voice barely louder than the wind brushing his collar. The system sometimes glitches. This wasn't a glitch. It was a deletion. Someone had deliberately erased her from the books to avoid paying wages, skip benefits, and sidestep every legal obligation. And it wasn't just Maya. Julian suspected that the others he saw today, the faces steeped in fear, might also be ghosts like her. No one was auditing. No one dared report it. And Donovan was the one holding the red pen. Julian's throat went dry. What he was facing wasn't just poor management. It was a system of exploitation hidden behind the facade of digital efficiency. He glanced again at the bottom of the handwritten schedule where a note in red ink read, "Fix," before sending to HR. Julian whispered more to himself than anyone else, who's fixing? And what are they hiding? And in that moment he knew this was the beginning of a much larger war. And Maya was only chapter 1. The next morning Julian returned to Aura SoHo. No appointment. No official reason. This time he headed straight into the kitchen. Behind the counter was a different world, cramped, blisteringly hot, filled with the clash of metal and the hiss of oil bubbling like a storm in a pan. But amidst it all, Hector stood still, unmoving like a pillar. His hands flipped burger patties with the precision of someone assembling a weapon, quick, exact, not a single misstep. Julian stepped beside him, slipped off his hoodie, rolled up his sleeves, and spoke just loud enough for Hector to hear. "How long have you worked here?" Hector didn't turn. 5 years, 3 managers, 8 restructurings. A beat later, he added, "Still not fired, still breathing. I guess that counts as luck." Julian glanced down at the drawer beneath the counter where the old manual cash counter was still kept for end-of-shift tallies. He lowered his voice further. "Ever notice anything off with the cash drawer?" A sharp clang of the skillet. The smell of seared meat filled the kitchen. Hector set down the spatula, wiped his hands on his apron, and for the first time turned to face Julian. His eyes weren't unfamiliar. They were the eyes of someone who's seen more than they ever wanted: war veterans' parents in emergency rooms, good people from bad places. Fridays. After close. Donovan balances the books himself. Cash disappears. Anyone who asks disappears from the roster. Julian stayed still. Burnt onions started to smoke from a pan across the way, but Hector didn't rush. He just stared at Julian, his dull eyes glowing with clarity like headlights in a fog. "I don't say anything, because everyone's trying to survive. But if you are who I think you are, then for the first time I see the door crack open." Julian swallowed hard. He didn't need to say he was the CEO. He didn't have to. The way he looked at Maya, the way he came back today, Hector already knew enough to understand. "I'm not promising help, but I won't get in your way. And if you need it, I've got a hard drive, kitchen cameras, I keep backups, old tech, unofficial, but real." Julian nodded lightly. Amid the smoke and sizzling meat, the two men formed an alliance not sealed with vows, but built on a quiet understanding deeper than words. Hector turned back to his skillet, his voice flat and heavy like iron hitting concrete. "Don't let this be like the last times. They come, ask questions, disappear. And we're left to keep surviving," Julian replied without hesitation. "I'm not here to ask, I'm here to stay." And in that moment, he wasn't just the heir. He was the one stepping into the fire to reclaim the soul his company had lost. Friday lunch rush. A line of customers stretched toward the counter. The air was thick with the sound of shouted orders, blenders whirring, and trays clashing. Everything was running like clockwork until Maya heard the all-too-familiar footsteps behind her. Donovan. He stepped close. The chill of mint on his breath brushed the back of her neck. Maya's stomach knotted. "Table 12 says their burger's missing cheese. Care to explain why that's not on the order?" His voice was light but loud enough for those nearby to hear. Maya stammered, I double-checked. The system shows cheese, maybe Donovan cut her off." His eyes narrowed like blades. "Maybe, so now you're blaming the system." She couldn't answer. Eyes were turning toward them. A customer frowned. A team member behind her froze mid-motion. Donovan leaned in, his voice lower, sharper. "You can't even handle a basic task. Maybe this position is still too much for you." Maya stood paralyzed. Her heart pounded. She could feel tears threatening to rise. And then a deep male voice rang out from across the counter, clear and commanding Donovan. "That's enough." The entire space went still. Maya turned. The man in the pale gray hoodie with dark brown hair stepped out from the booth in the corner. Donovan smirked. "Oh, look who's back. Our VIP guest. What you planning to defend my staff now?" The man didn't respond. He pulled out his phone. His eyes locked on Donovan. Calm, precise. He dialed a number. Maya looked toward the office landline. It began to ring loud and urgent. Donovan hesitated, then huffed and walked over to answer. On the other end, the same man's voice, but now every word sliced through the air like a blade. "This is Julian Croft. You're fired. Security is on its way. Leave this store. Immediately." Each word landed like a hammer. The room held its breath. Hector froze mid-motion at the grill. A female employee covered her mouth. Customers began whispering Croft as in. The CEO, Donovan, went pale. He was frozen lips, twitching, unable to speak. Julian stepped forward toward Maya. No fanfare, no arrogance. Just a quiet nod. "I'm sorry." His voice wasn't loud, but everyone heard. It wasn't just for Maya. It was for everyone who'd ever been overlooked, for Hector, for Jake, for all the names that never made it into the system. Julian turned to the team, his gaze firm but not cold. "We didn't build this company to crush people's spirits. My father founded Aura Burger on one promise, that this would always be a place that respected human dignity. I won't let that promise be buried with him." No one spoke. But for the first time, Maya saw something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope, flickering quietly in the eyes of those around her. That night, the penthouse in Manhattan, usually bathed in warm light, sat cloaked in the cold glow of a laptop screen. Julian sat surrounded by piles of printed reports, financial statements, and blinking email threads. The glass of whiskey beside him remained untouched. He was piecing together something far more dangerous than Donovan. From timekeeping logs to payroll files, everything was clean in a way that felt unnaturally precise, too precise for the errors to be accidental. Julian uncovered at least 4 other stores with the same pattern: employees disappearing from payroll, yet still working full shifts. He traced the chain of commendation reports. The common denominator, Donovan Finch, had been praised repeatedly by one man, Marcus Thorne. Julian opened the restricted access email channel visible only with executive credentials. A hidden thread appeared. Subject: Labor Optimization Initiative. Marcus Thorne wrote, "Donovan is the ideal model. Strong optimization mindset. We should replicate this structure across other branches. Keep this off internal communications. Tier 1 team only." Julian scrolled further. There were internal documents discussing non-termination cost reductions, a euphemism for deleting workers from the system while continuing to make them work. He needed no further proof. Marcus wasn't just aware, he was the mastermind. This exploitative machine wasn't a software glitch. It wasn't rogue local management. It was a covert policy, deliberately engineered, methodically enforced. A system built to crush. Worse still, Julian found a formal complaint from another store filed 3 months earlier. A female employee named Amanda accused Marcus of direct threats and withholding overtime pay. An audio clip was attached, but the case had been marked insufficient evidence. Case closed. Julian leaned back, tilting his face toward the ceiling. One truth stared back at him: Donovan was the pawn. Marcus was the hand moving the pieces. The entire restaurant chain, from the streets of Brooklyn to Chelsea's luxury blocks, was fueled by something invisible: fear. He remembered the look in Maya's eyes as she reached into the tip jar. Hector's voice when he said, "People who ask disappear from the schedule." All of it was the fallout of that one initiative, one that turned people into numbers and silence into a management tool. Julian stood. The laptop screen was still glowing behind him. One last email from Marcus to Donovan stared back with the most chilling words he'd ever read: "Well done. The less noise, the better for shareholders." Julian typed one line into his laptop. "Just one emergency board meeting requested. Subject: ethics violation and labor fraud." He didn't need an alarm. Tomorrow would be war. And this time he wasn't in the basement. He was heading straight for the serpent at the top of the chain, 54th floor conference room. Double-glazed glass walls looked out over all of Manhattan. On the walnut boardroom table lay printed Q2 profit reports, upward trending graphs, and rows of green highlighted efficient labor costs. Marcus Thorne sat at the head of the table, navy suit, sharp white collar, crisp. He was speaking with that all-too-familiar tone used only for shareholders, never once for the employees whose names he didn't know. Thanks to my strategy, we've cut labor costs by 12% this quarter. Our modern management approach, automation, productivity filtering, is proving highly effective. Julian stood. He brought no presentation, no laptop, only a single USB in his pocket. He plugged it into the large screen at the back of the room. The lights dimmed. A single frame filled the screen, Maya's face captured at the moment she reached into the tip jar. No narration. No sound. Just one tear slid down her cheek as she pressed the button to finalize the order. No one spoke. No fingers tapped. No one cleared their throat. Julian stepped to the center of the room. His voice wasn't raised, but it was steady, and it carried like judgment. This is your operational efficiency, Marcus. He looked around the room, the same space where new store launches had been approved, stock options valued, and marketing budgets signed off. Today, it had become a courtroom. This is Maya Brooks, an employee at SoHo. She worked 32 hours a week for 2 months without ever appearing in the system. She wasn't paid, no vacation time, no insurance, but she was reprimanded, humiliated, and forced into overtime. She existed, but you made her invisible. Marcus scoffed, a smug smile flickering across his lips. Julian, we're talking about a single employee. You're going to undermine system-wide data over one emotional anecdote. Julian didn't turn to face him. He kept his eyes on the screen on the frozen tear. No, I'm not fighting the system. I'm fighting for the people buried beneath it. He opened a folder and laid it on the table, a copy of Amanda's formal complaint, excerpts from Marcus's emails to Donovan, altered scheduling records, and photographs of handwritten shift notes from the store. Then, for the first time, he looked Marcus dead in the eye, as if watching a man moments from being unmasked. You didn't just know. You designed it. You created the erasure mechanism. You forced employees to work without records. You encouraged managers to optimize through threats, suppression, and silencing. My father built Aura from a food truck, and one promise: no one working here should ever feel invisible. He paused. The air grew heavy. Board members exchanged glances. One whispered to their assistant. Another flipped anxiously through a report. Julian finished, not with anger but confession. I've been silent too long. I let numbers blur the heart of this brand. But I won't stay silent anymore. And if we don't choose people over profit, then we don't deserve to continue. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a letter. His signed resignation. He placed it squarely in the center of the table. I didn't take this position to be a CEO. I took it to give this company its soul back. A weighted silence filled the room. Marcus opened his mouth as if to speak, but no one was listening anymore. A board member tapped the table. I call for an immediate vote to discipline Marcus Thorne. Effective immediately. Julian exhaled, not out of exhaustion, but for the first time in years out of relief. 3 weeks later. No press conference. No media debut. Just quiet changes, and ones that actually mattered. SoHo. Morning. Maya stood behind the register. Her white shirt was crisply pressed. Her name now gleamed on a metal tag: Maya Brooks, store manager. She no longer bowed her head. When Jake, the same young employee Donovan once humiliated, asked, "Hey, how do we handle customer complaints here?" Maya smiled. Listen, don't get defensive, don't shift blame. Just be the person you once needed when you were in their shoes. Next to her, a new poster read, "The Maya policy, all staff have full access, oversight, and rights to monitor their pay and work schedule." Aura Training Center, Brooklyn. Hector stood before a group of 12 young faces, some with full-sleeve tattoos, some who'd dropped out of school. He wasn't in a suit, just his same old apron voice, rough but steady. Being a leader doesn't mean barking orders. It means scrubbing pans, lifting pots, listening, and never making anyone stay silent out of fear. He spoke each word like he was hammering it into the ceiling. From that day on, Hector became the National Director of Training, though everyone simply called him Chef H. Aura HQ Accounting Department. A new line of code flashed online: independent payroll audits, 24/7 employee access. Julian no longer held the title of CEO, but he still showed up every day, just not using the private elevator anymore. Aura SoHo. Late afternoon. Julian sat in the corner booth. In front of him, a simple burger. No Wagyu beef, no truffle oil, no sides. Beside him sat a boy about 6 years old, messy brown hair, a t-shirt with a cartoon burger, grinning widely. "Dad, can I wipe the table?" Julian nodded. The boy stood on tiptoe, grabbed a napkin, and carefully wiped away drops of mustard like he was painting. Maya walked over and placed a receipt on the table. Nothing fancy, just the number 0.00 and a handwritten note. "Thank you for believing we deserved to be seen." Julian didn't say a word. He simply looked around. Laughter echoed from the kitchen. An elderly customer was being helped to their seat by Jake. Hector passed by and patted a new hire on the shoulder. Aura wasn't perfect like the brochures anymore, but it was alive. It breathed. It had a soul. Julian closed his eyes. For the first time in years, the burger in his hands actually had flavor. Not the flavor of meat, but the taste of redemption. If you've ever worked somewhere that made you feel invisible, or if you believe that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity, whether they stand behind a register or hold a napkin to wipe a table, leave a comment. Share your story. You never know, your voice might be the one that makes someone feel seen for the very first time. And if this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story, so you never miss another journey of justice and healing. Because here we believe one act of kindness can shake an entire system.